Well, hello out there in podcast land, and welcome to Guilty Pleasures, the show where we celebrate the movies we love despite what critics, public opinion, or even our own God-given sense might tell us. I am your host, Lou Hare, on behalf of the Front Row Network, which is one of the new things that we're going to talk about right up front here. We are the Front Row Network. We are expanding. If you've heard any of our other podcasts, you know that we are going beyond movies. We're going to go to TV and basically wherever the hell else we feel like going. So with that, we have another very cool announcement. If you haven't listened to any of our other shows in the past couple of weeks, this is a new announcement. The Front Row shows are all getting their own feeds, which includes Guilty Pleasures. So by the time you are hearing this, Guilty Pleasures should have its own feed available in whatever podcast app you choose to listen to, iTunes, Podbean, wherever. So all you have to do is search for Guilty Pleasures, and you can subscribe exclusively to this podcast if this is your thing. We're also going to be available on the Front Row Network main feed. So if you want to get all of the other shows that we're doing, you can still do that. But this gives you a way to maybe kind of cull through if there's some episodes that you haven't heard yet or want to hear again, including shows featuring our two guests today, which we'll get to in a minute. The other thing I want to tell you about right up front, we're going to get the plugs out of the way early in this episode because we've got a lot to get to with this movie, and I want to give it its due. The month of March is going to be very busy for me personally. It's 1 year since I showed up on the Front Row Network to do the March Madness Ultimate 90s Movie Bracket. And 1 year later, it's March Madness again. We're bringing it back. This time, we're going to the 80s. So the 80s Bracket podcast will be coming up later this month. We're going to do a selection Saturday where we're going to talk about our different, the high seeds, the low seeds. We're gonna get into it, and then we will be doing a special double episode podcast on that. So please make sure you check out that. That'll be available on the main feed. And then finally, the last thing we're going to talk about before we get into this month's episode is next month, we are bringing back the Twitter poll. We had a lot of fun doing it with our February episode of Overboard. So for the month of April, the Guilty Pleasure episode will be decided by you via Twitter. And this month's theme, we decided, we've got the reboot of Tomb Raider coming up this month. And then next month, we have Rampage starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He'll always be The Rock to me. It's weird just to say Dwayne Johnson, but I feel like I'm corporately mandated to do so. So our theme this month is going to be video game adaptations. So we have picked 4 movies for you to vote on and to see where they rank in the midst of the current video game adaptations that maybe we'll get to see in March and April. So we're starting from the beginning. Option number 1, the very first video game adaptation, one of the biggest video games in history, not one of the biggest movies of all time, 1993's Super Mario Brothers with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. Next up, keeping with the 8-bit Nintendo theme, 1994's Double Dragon, starring Robert Patrick, Scott Wolf, and Alyssa Milano. That will be a can't miss episode. Option number 3, 1995's Mortal Kombat. Nothing more needs to be said other than the theme song. Even just saying the title, I just want to yell it out. But we're putting that up and see if it wins the poll. And then finally, Rampage stars The Rock. It's a video game adaptation, but it's not the first video game adaptation starring The Rock. So we're going to do the first one up on the poll, 2005's Doom, starring The Rock and Carl Urban. He was billed as The Rock then, so I can call him that now. So those are your choices: Super Mario Brothers, Double Dragon, Mortal Kombat, or Doom. Those will be up on our Twitter feed. Go find us on Twitter, or you can find me at the Fake Lou Hare or the Front Reviews at Front Reviews. It will be pinned, and you can vote and see what we're going to talk about in April. I can't tell you The Rock would be on if you picked Doom, but I can't tell you he wouldn't be at this point. So who knows? Maybe, But anyway, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to this month's episode, March. I mentioned it last month. It's spring break. People are taking trips. They're flying all over the place. So let's fly the friendly skies and hit 1997's Con Air. And I have two very special guests, both returning from their previous episodes. First up, you heard her previously on the Grease 2 episode. Please welcome back to the show, Sam Dabina. How are you, Sam?
I'm great. How are you?
I am fantastic, especially after reliving this movie. It was
everything you wanted it to be.
And more. And then also joining us on the podcast, a previous guest from the Batman Forever, flying solo without his sidekick, Sam Weller. Please welcome Christian Crosby. How's it going, Christian?
Yeah, I am elated. I am jacked up. I am ready to go. Con Air.
Oh my God! Much like Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I cannot be contained. I'm humble. I'm also intense. I'm great. In short, I'm great. Thank you for asking, Lou.
Great. Okay, so let's get into it. For those of you who don't know what this movie is about, when a plane filled with the most ruthless convicts in the world is taken over, only one man, ex-Army Ranger Cameron Poe, a parolee returning home to his wife and daughter, can stop them. It was directed by Simon West, who doesn't have a really extensive catalog outside of this. I was kind of surprised to find. After this, he does The General's Daughter, Expendables 2, and the first Lara Croft movie. Outside of that, he doesn't do much as a director, which I kind of was surprised about. We're going to get into the cast in a little bit, but really, when you think about this movie, there's one name that comes to mind, and that is the producer, Jerry Bruckheimer. This is Bruckheimer's first solo effort after splitting with his partner, Don Simpson. Don Simpson passes away a year prior to this movie being released, but the split had kind of already happened. In fact, Don Simpson didn't like the concept for this movie. He didn't want to do it. And Jerry Bruckheimer was already looking to distance himself from Don Simpson. So he went ahead and started making this. And eventually, Don Simpson passed away, and Bruckheimer was off to the races to begin a very successful solo producing career.
If I may interject real quickly, and forgive me for interrupting, but I have because I feel like Jerry Bruckheimer unfairly, for maybe some people that don't know, is unfairly kind of thought of as a douchebag when it comes to producing movies and the kinds of
unfairly
that he makes. Hold on. Just to compare him to his old producing partner, Don Simpson's, I have a story firsthand from somebody that was at a party that had arranged. It was somebody that I had worked with or I'd worked for that was a action movie screenwriter of the 80s. Was at a party with Don Simpson and Arnold Schwarzenegger and a couple other people, and they were going to get this dying kid a copy of the movie The Running Man before it came out. And I think, I think it was Commando maybe. Anyways, it was something that Don Simpson was produced with Arnold Schwarzenegger and my old boss. And Don Simpson, they tried to get this kid who was dying, a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, a copy of this movie before he died. And Don Simpson said, "Fuck no!" Like literally, that dying kid is not getting their fingers on this movie. Before we know it, it'll be all over the place. So I don't mean to, God rest his soul. I'm sure he was a nice guy, but at least from what I've heard firsthand, he's denying dying Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, let's put it this way: you've got to probably be a pretty big dick for Jerry Bruckheimer to say maybe we should work together.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just saw Jerry Bruckheimer's latest movie. I mean, it might be, I don't know if it was just good timing or not, but 12 Strong, the movie with Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, was that good?
No, not at all. It was like parts where it's like Team America levels of offensiveness to Arab people. Like, I seriously say to myself in the middle of like the movie, "Oh, Durka." Like it's pretty bad. I love a lot of shit movies, and I actually left through this one about halfway through.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think Bruckheimer is more of a like surface, like face value kind of producer. I don't think you really need to dig deep to appreciate anything that he does, really.
No, and that's
too far.
Right. Yes, which we're gonna do tonight. We're gonna look really deep,
right?
Which makes them, which also makes them kind of fun. But yeah, this and one of the reasons we're covering it on Guilty Pleasures because Jerry Bruckheimer is known for huge hits, and this movie financially is certainly maybe the best. Aside from Batman Forever, one of the highest grossing movies we'll do. It makes $101 million. It doubles that worldwide, but it's a $75 million budget, so it's not like a huge moneymaker. But when you look at Bruckheimer's resume, it's actually the 20th highest grossing movie of his producing career. It's
no shit.
No, it's down there. And it tells me because I've always enjoyed, I'm take it or leave it with Bruckheimer. And what I've learned in looking at this list is my style Bruckheimer is not America's Bruckheimer because the top 3 are all Pirates of the Caribbean movies. The top 4 are all Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But the 2 movies that shocked me at number 7 and 8 is Armageddon and Pearl Harbor. They double what this movie made. They both make over $200 million, and this one makes $100 million. And I would watch this one over the other 2 any day of the week.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's
garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor is a piece of shit. I mean, I was rooting for the Japanese in that version of Pearl Harbor. But I think that if I can sum up this movie, I actually think is kind of zen, and I'll explain why. Is that it is, and as you mentioned, the director, there are some beautiful like shots, like coupled, like underscored by some of the dumbest dialogue and characterizations. Like, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. We can get more into it later, but the hero shot where Nicolas Cage steps off the plane or the bus for the first time, and he's hit by the breeze and the sun on his face.
His hair,
his mullet is blowing back. That's an incredible composed shot, right? Mm-hmm. But but the frame is filled with the biggest piece of shit that you could possibly imagine, and with every good this thing does, it is equaled only in its amount of shit. So like it's a sum zero game is Con Air, in my opinion.
Well, that's the shot. That's like the moneymaker shot, right? That you always see the hair flowing in the wind of Nick Cage when you think of this movie. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that hair and that shot. And I also feel like it's a great shot, but I also feel that Nick Cage at some point was like, guys, I grew it like this for a reason.
Yeah.
You're getting the fucking shot.
Let's use this.
Yeah.
If there's
I
not
don't get a
shot,
wind machine.
They did get a wind machine. I guarantee you at some point they set that shot up, and there's like, we need to have more movement in it somehow. Like we're pushing in with the camera. We need something else going on. Like, let's see, can we get a wind guy here by 3 o'clock? Okay, what we can do? Get on the phone. Somebody made a lot of money that day.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's
rightfully so.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's in the pantheon of 90s action movie shots. Maybe, I don't know. Nick Cage?
It's up there.
And that's a pretty big pantheon, Lou. I think you're right.
That's a huge one. But this also comes out a year after The Rock, which is a little bit more successful than Con Air. So this is really the beginning of Bruckheimer kind of just getting into his own as a producer and really just kind of taking the world by storm. So it's just like right on the cusp before his movies just become a summertime staple. It's not terribly well received when it comes out, as you can imagine. It gets its current Rotten Tomato score is 55%. not horrible, not as I'm certainly not as bad as it could have been. Its IMDb score, however, is 6.8.
0.8.
6.8. We're again, this is the second movie in a row that we've got the 6.8. It's tied now with Overboard for the highest rated movie we've done.
That's higher than I thought it would be. Well,
yeah, well, and I think that's part of it too. Is this movie also I think has aged? I don't want to say well,
but I think
it's aged, but I think it's maybe remembered a little bit more fondly than even some of his more successful movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get into that. So I think that's maybe more of an accurate, it's a batshit crazy movie, but there's a lot to love about this movie too. So let's start with first impressions and tell me about the first time that you saw this movie, what your first reaction was. Let's start with Sam.
I don't remember the first time I saw this movie. I know my dad used to make me and my sister just watch whatever he was watching, and it would always be these action movies or, really bro-y kind of movies. I think what I love most about this movie is the cast, because it's like secretly really fucking stellar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, Malkovich, Buscemi. I mean, it was like random Danny Trejo as a horrifying person. It's really, really good, and everybody, like, as kind of mediocre as the script is, I think everybody like does a really good job of like fleshing out these random con men who are like, some are on death row and blah blah blah. I think it's really entertaining. I think it's really fun. For as kind of cheesy as it can get sometimes.
Right. Yeah, because you're 100% right, because everyone in this movie is selling. They are committed to this. And this this is, what if The Expendables was filled with character actors? That's what this movie is to me, because all of these people are known from other films, but none of them are really known for action movies. Even at least at the time of the release, Nicolas Cage had only done one action movie, and that was The Rock a year prior. But certainly when you thought like,
oh, right,
action villain, you didn't think John Malkovich, and you didn't think of Dave Chappelle.
I forget who was that.
Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, all of these, but all of these people like right in that era are also really popular for other things.
Yeah,
and, Ving Rhames had just done Pulp Fiction, and so they're all like really popular, talented supporting actors. So it's like let's get them in the movie and see if they can give some gravitas to what is clearly some bullshit.
I remember I first saw this movie and buckle your fucking seatbelts, because I saw this
oh my
Christmas
God.
Eve. On Christmas Eve, I was a double. I rented this along with Face Off.
Mm.
And I remember
Good for you.
I watched Con Air first, and I was blown away. Literally blown away. I remember feeling really bad for what's his name, Baby Doll. This John or Nicolas Cage's black friend.
Baby-O.
Baby-O.
Oh, Baby-O.
I remember feeling really bad for Baby-O, and like
I remember the insulin.
Yeah, I remember afterwards then watching Face Off and being like disgusted, because they worked that entire movie to save Baby-O's life. And then in Face Off, people are just getting waxed like left and right. And I remember just being like, it's just all this stupid gratuitous violence in a John Woo film. That's not for me. I like sophisticated movies like fucking On Air.
You prefer the victims to just be faceless people on the Vegas Strip.
That's right.
Oh my God.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm the bad guy. Okay. Yeah,
as long as we haven't attached any emotional connection to the characters, we can mow them down.
That part is so ridiculous.
Well, and
the ending, they're
yes, that whole sequence is crazy in the best possible way. And I remember because I saw this movie in the theater. It came out the summer before my senior year of high school. And so this was I was in that era where we just saw everything that came out. And I remember thinking this movie is insane, but it's my kind of insane because it is so cheesy and over the top. And one of the things I liked about it, and I still like about it, is that action movies can, especially from the 80s and even into the early 90s, could take themselves so seriously that to see a movie that was kind of winking and nodding at the audience was kind of like a breath of fresh air, I thought, because even like The Rock is pretty, has a couple of moments of levity, but it's super serious. And the other Bruckheimer movie that I really liked was Bad Boys, which came out 2 years before. And that was, it was funny and had fun with what's the action world, which is a ridiculous premise. So I was on board, but it had been a while since I had seen this movie till we decided to do this for this podcast. And I fell in love with it all over again.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's far too many like one-liners. There's far too many like, I don't know, farcical moments for it to be taken too seriously as like a legit action movie. Like, yeah, like The Rock, totally. It's a lot heavier than this. This one is, I feel like it's more of a goofy wackadoo kind of action movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's. I mean, there's so many cool parts. I mean, you could just like how cool are the character introductions where John Cusack is just giving us the exposition about like who each person is, the horrible crimes that they've committed. Like how fucking cool is it when they wheel out Steve Buscemi? And
I know.
Got him and shit like that. And there's like a bunch of arms guards and I don't know. It's just it's incredibly cool to find out just this John Cusack is this cool liberal pussy who's just trying to make everybody feel good.
So and bad.
It's I mean it's a great movie.
I've seen this movie more times than I can count. Like it just always happens to be on TV somewhere somehow. Or used to be anyway. Probably not recently, but like I've watched reruns of this many, many times, and it still continues to entertain me each and every time.
So I think the best place to start, we mentioned him earlier, in this cast of top acclaimed actors, the lead stands above them all, and that is Nicolas Cage himself, fresh off an Oscar win for Leaving Las Vegas.
Right. Sure.
He is once again back in Vegas, in a manner of speaking. And he is, he's the linchpin to all of this. So let's just start. What state we mentioned the hair, but I think be remiss if we're going to talk Nick Cage in this movie. There's two things that come to mind: the hair and the accent.
The accent.
Yeah.
Now
go ahead, Sam.
Well, no, I haven't spent too much time in the South, and I'm not totally. I don't. What state is he from? Where?
I can tell you.
Is it? Oh, please.
He's from. I thought he was from Alabama.
He is. He is from. Okay. He is from the state of my lovely wife and friend of the pod, Donna Hare.
Yeah, now, Donna doesn't talk that. It's very Foghorn Leghorn.
It's very Foghorn Leghorn. It's
very Colonel Sanders in a not great way.
And in a much slower, deliberate way too.
Very lackadaisical.
The monologue at the beginning where he's just reading the voiceover of the letters to his daughter. He sounds like he could not give a shit whether he sees this girl. My darling, I cannot wait to see you.
It's so bad.
So bad. And, I questioned whether I was going to have Donna watch this with us because for those who are not familiar, she was raised in Alabama. We go down, we visit her family every year. I have yet to meet a single person in that state that sounds like Nick Cage in this movie.
I disagree. I assume
Oh.
Nicolas Cage did his homework and, you know, was probably had not just one but several vocal or dialect coaches, and sure that the accent was a true true Alabaman.
Well, you are correct in that he did go to Alabama.
Okay.
To visit?
He went to Alabama to visit because the Southern accent is allegedly his idea. It was his choice. He wanted his character to be from the South because he felt that Cameron Poe was a very chivalrous character, and when he thinks of chivalrous men, he thinks of the South.
He thinks of Alabama.
Yeah.
Gentlemen and juleps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love that was his go-to. It was like, okay, where's some place where, you know, they would care about seeing their wives again? Alabama, you know, no other place, you know. And it was, I guess this was Nick Cage just kind of coming up with a character quirk that kind of works, but again,
yeah,
it does. I mean, imagine, but like on the flip side of that, like I said, this movie is yin and yang, right? Mm-hmm. So if you take away that Southern accent and we just have another Nick Cage character, I mean, that's fine. But does it really? Is it as sweet without the sour? I mean, the ridiculousness makes it stand out, and I don't want to live in a world where he's not.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and it makes his line. It makes the accent does help make some of those lines, which I wrote down a couple of them are just like you're right. It does help sell those lines a little better because there's the moment where during the shootout at the trailer park / airport, which
not really sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever that is, where he literally calls the guy next to him old timer.
Oh yeah.
Oh my lord.
Like what?
Who even do Alabamans?
I've never no.
Hogwarts can just kind of hang out and stash a plane where nobody fucking notices whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's okay, old timer. and again, that really, there's no way that you could say you should say old timer unless it's in a ridiculous Southern accent.
Right. Well, I mean, imagine the number one tagline from the movie, his best line, which is "Put the bunny back in the box." Like, can you imagine that without some sort of Southern dialect? I don't think that you can.
No, and particularly, and not even a good Southern dialect, because like even if that's authentic, if he was actually authentically Southern, or you know, and sounded at all like a real person, that line falls flat. You mentioned the bunny, so let's talk about the bunny for a second. The
bunny, yeah, so significant.
What does the bunny represent to you, Lou?
Well, I can tell you what it represented to Nick Cage, because that was his other contribution to this film.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
The bunny was his idea. And the bunny this is what happens. Like, we need this Oscar. We want Nick Cage to be in our movie because he's an Oscar-winning actress, and that's gonna, you know, but when you bring on Nick Cage, you're gonna get Nick Cage, and he's just throwing out ideas. So again, his idea was to introduce the bunny as a bit of a through line to remind the audience and himself. It was to represent the child that he's racing home to go see.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I didn't necessarily forget it, but okay.
Yeah. There's, you know,
I know.
There's
I
plenty
know
of times. Yeah.
I remember again when I watched it on Christmas Eve. I remember the bunny, looking at the bunny, and maybe it was just juxtaposed to the cool presents I knew that I was going to get the next morning. But I was like, what a poor piece of shit. What
a terrible gift.
Right. He could apparently buy in the prison commissary.
Right.
I'll tell you.
That checks out.
Yeah, no. I worked at a prison for a few years.
Right.
there are lots of things you can buy. Stuffed animals are not one of them.
Yeah.
It
for
always
multiple
confused
reasons.
me. Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that that's one of the items that we can buy there. But
yeah,
all right.
No, you'll be comforted to know that no, you cannot buy stuffed animals.
I am comforted by that. So thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's his idea, and I feel like that and the hair and the accent, it's just, Nick Cage just kind of putting his thumbprint on this movie.
It just feels like he wants to have really good ideas, like grand Oscar-worthy ideas, and then he comes up with a pink bunny, and you're like, oh, okay, well, you tried.
And they're like, well, did you see Leaving Las Vegas? He's an artist. He must know what he's talking about.
You're right.
Yeah, and inject someone with the artistic choices as Nicolas Cage with hubris, like the hubris that comes along with winning an Oscar. I would suspect it would be like what happens if you were to give like a really creative person like methamphetamines. Like, they would, and when that person is already acting like a meth addict but without it. So I mean, imagine they would paint the ceiling, and I think that is kind of the sum total of what Con Air ends up being in the very end. Should be thankful for it.
Do you remember when John Cusack used to be in movies?
Oh,
yeah,
that was a fun time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
John Cusack is in this movie, everyone.
Yes, he is. And this
remember that?
Yeah. It seems like he doesn't hate his life or like the world when he's in this movie. It's kind of remarkable. I mean, this must have been like after he just got married for the fourth time or something like that. Life's finally going my way. But I don't know.
I mean, and I don't know many air marshals or specifically what he does, but is it just me, or is he like super terrible in this movie? Am I wrong?
I don't know if he knows what movie he's in.
I think that's what it is. Like, I just don't know what he's trying to do the whole time.
I think he's the one who didn't get the memo about this movie supposed to be over the top. Like I feel like he's the one who's like trying, and maybe it's because he doesn't get a lot of scenes with all of the other character actors, or most of his scenes are in like the office and stuff. So maybe he just feels like he's doing some serious movie, or I don't know. He didn't bother to read the rest of the script, or just he didn't have it. He doesn't have a lot as much to play off of. Maybe I don't know.
When you say that, it might actually be true, because if most of the scenes that he's in, with the exception of like the ones that take place at the airfield and then in the third act when they're riding motorcycles, it's him in Calm Meaney the entire time, and he's like quoting Dostoevsky. Like, he's arguing about the nature of prisons and what kind of value systems we have as a society with those that we've incarcerated. Like, if I were reading just my part, I'd be like, oh, so this is a pretty heavy drama about the nature of prison systems. Oh, then there's a motorcycle chase at the end. Okay, I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And he's maybe not being privy to all like the ticks and added bullshit that Nick Cage is doing. They're like, there should have been like a page that went to him and said, no, go broader. He brought a fucking bunny onto the set.
Have you heard his accent?
I guarantee you, John Cusack did not even realize Malkovich was in the movie. I guarantee you, he had no idea until they went at the press junket later on.
Like, hey, John, what are you doing?
Hey, what are you doing? We're both Chicago guys.
I'm in the movie, John. Did you not see it? No, I didn't read past my scenes. No.
You read other people's scenes? Okay, all right.
To each his own.
Well, and Cusack himself famously hates this movie. He will not talk about it in interviews. Do not ask
you, John Cusack. Talk about it. One of your best movies.
Like, what movie do you love, John Cusack? Like, Serendipity? Like, come on. Let's get over yourself.
Yeah.
Was he Must Love Dogs, Sam? Do you know this?
I do. He was Must Love Dogs.
Yes.
Fuck you, John Cusack.
Right? Get off your high horse.
Somebody can fact check me later, but I'm almost positive if this is not the highest grossing movie starring John Cusack, it's in the top 5. So it's one of because most of his movies, at least in his career, I mean, I think there's everybody who's like, if you say John Cusack, like I think everybody, generally likes John Cusack, but none of his movies were ever like huge hits. So this is like the one thing that actually I think financially was a success at the time. And
it's gotta be like, I mean, not counting movies that where John Cusack appears in from adjusted for inflation, like movies from the 80s maybe, but like I can't imagine that he's got other ones that have made more money.
Right.
I don't know if I could name other ones than the ones we just mentioned. So yeah.
Right. Because Say Anything would be his like iconic role, and and that was not like a big hit when it came out. So it would have to be I don't even know what would be second for that, but so he plays an FBI agent who, a federal marshal whose sole job it is to make sure that plane lands with all of the passengers intact. And it's funny to me because that's the other thing that I think one of the reasons this movie isn't as the stakes in this movie seem awfully low.
Right.
Like no one here has a master plan other than, hey, we're gonna hijack the plane and then escape to Mexico. Like they're not.
Everyone lives happily ever after. Like they don't really go past that part.
Mm-hmm. The only lives that are ever really are threatened are the people on the plane and Baby-O. So when they make that decision to land on the Vegas Strip, and they touch on it like briefly, and I wish they kind of had cut. I wish they had just cut that line because they make you think for a second. Oh yeah, they're about to just destroy Vegas, basically to save 2 people.
Right.
Like
they say the line like, "Oh, we need to land this at the airport," and they say, "Oh no, we can't make it, so I have to land on the Strip. Oh no, that's gonna kill so many civilians." But then they're like, "Meh, that's fine." Like, and then they end up doing it. Although I did watch super closely, and it looks like when it lands on the Strip and like slides through the casinos and stuff, it looks like they never really actually hurt anybody.
Oh no.
Which seems absurd and far-fetched to me. But if you watch, like they never actually show. Everybody seems to run out of the way just in the nick of time. So maybe they did make it okay in the end.
The only person that I know that I know for sure that gets hurt during the plane crash, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, is Danny Trejo.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. He's the only one. Yeah. He's the only one that doesn't survive a plane crash on the Vegas Strip.
Yeah, Baby-O just got shot in the fucking chest, and he survives a plane crash afterwards.
And he's fine.
Not a scratch.
He's fine. That insulin really worked.
It really helped.
That was some good shit.
What? Who besides like Nick Cage and John Malkovich, let's say, who is your favorite criminal?
I was a huge Ving Rhames fan because of Pulp Fiction. So when he was in this, I was very happy to see him in this movie. But yeah, I think it's probably still him because I think he's got that presence where he is a legit, he's threatening, but he's like almost always smiling in the movie too. He's got like just kind of like, I'm happy to be here kind of mentality. That would I guess off the top, that would probably be mine. What about you, Christian?
Probably. I love Billy Bedlam, who I think is cool. I think it's he had a cool backstory where he killed his wife's family and stuff like that because she cheated on him. I did like Pinball a lot when I was younger.
Yes.
And then I also, just because it is 2018, I do have a lot of respect for the cross-dressing prison inmate, the Hispanic guy.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Sally can't dance.
Sally can't dance. Yeah, who was also, and I also really liked her as a kid because she, or the actor, is in the movie Hackers as one of the team of hackers. I forget what his code name was, but yeah, he's also in that movie too. And the fact that I was able to marry hackers with a Nicolas Cage movie is
good for you.
That is in your Venn diagram right there. But yeah, no, that's the one when I went to watch this movie that I remember, and I was like, oh, this is probably not going to age well. And it doesn't. But like, it's still, I would have been more offended at what a crass stereotype it was if literally every other character wasn't some form of crass stereotype.
This is true.
Like it would stand out more if everyone else was much more serious, and then you just have this, pretty offensive character by 2018 standards. But
yeah, I mean, again, in this movie's defense, like again, you can't have the good without the bad. There are writers that I know that can't draw well-written characters in a 2-hour span. Right, this movie does it for an entire plane full of prison inmates in some quick scenes that they each kind of have. Like Johnny 23, like we understand so much about him, who he is, and how other people feel about him in the plane in maybe 30 seconds. That is something that is incredibly hard to do. Also. Right. Really quickly, that there is this crazy moral code on the plane full of killers that
we kill people, but we don't rape women. Yeah. Just to be clear, which I respect.
Yeah, there's a line. There's a code of ethics behind it.
Hey, come on,
and exactly. And that's the other thing. Yeah, you're right about that because they introduce the characters very, very well, very quickly, and you get, obviously you get everything you need to know about them really quick. The thing that I love about them as a WWE fan is all of these names for them. Their nicknames are some of the WWE 2K18 create a player nicknames you could give, Cyrus the Virus. And
so
the Marietta Mangler, Diamond Dog. Like these are some of just the corniest names that I can't imagine that anybody would actually be given these monikers in real life or like by anybody. Like even like the press would have coined the term Marietta Mangler, and I feel like it's sent back to the copy room.
I agree. I think my favorite character is Steve Buscemi because I think he has the biggest arc in this film. I mean, he starts off, he seems super scary. And then once you get to know him, once you peel back those layers, he's just a nice guy, Sure, he murdered 20 or 30 people. Sure, he wore the head of some chick while he was driving a car across state lines. But, we all have our faults. And especially at the end, when he meets that little girl and he's having a tea party with her, and then they sing, he's got the whole world in his hands together. And then it turns out you think he straight up killed her, but he didn't. So I think he had the biggest character arc in this film.
So are you positing, Sam, that at some point Garland Green sees the error of his ways in this movie?
I feel like, yeah, I do. I think that's because it seems like the way they set it up is you think he killed that little girl, and then you see her at the end, like waving bye to the plane when he's not there. So Christian Christian, your mind is blown right now. What's happening?
I think you are 100% right.
Yes.
No, because you think about it on the plane, he says, when he gives Garland Green gives that little speech about Billy Bedlam and how fucking crazy he is. And Nicolas Cage says, it's my daughter's birthday. I really don't want to have to hear you talk or whatever it is. And he gives him this look back. And I remember when I watched the movie, I was like, huh, that's kind of weird. And then when he has this moment with the girl, when he's singing, he's got the whole world in his hands and he's looking at her like, of course, the psychopath that he is. He's not thinking I think when Nicolas Cage said, it's my daughter's birthday, that gave him a moment of pause and actually clued him into the sanctity of life. And then when he's singing with the little girl, he says, oh my God, this is a child. This is important. I'm not going to kill her. Lets her live. And then when he says, does the new shooter feel lucky? Yes, he does. He's got a whole new lease on life as a non-serial killer.
I think so too. And when the plane is like going down in Vegas and he's singing to himself, I think he's like, rejoicing and, praising to God. And I feel like I think we've got a new serial killer on our hands. Not a serial killer.
Not a serial killer. Yeah,
right.
Well, because that's the only logical explanation for the tag at the end. Because, to jump to the very, very end, and we will get to the scene right before it, but after the reunion scene of Cage and his wife and daughter, the tag is you think everyone's dead, and he's just shooting crabs, and all of a sudden then Sweet Home Alabama comes. So like the punchline is supposed to be, the most evil of the people not only doesn't die, but he gets to escape. And that's such a dark tagline to the movie that it seems out of place. But no, maybe that is in his head. In as an actor, Buscemi's like, you know what? I'm gonna give this guy an arc. And
I think if anyone could do it, it would be Buscemi to like actually make something out of these kind of 2D characters.
And it was 90s Buscemi too. We didn't know a whole lot about him. You know, he was this weirdo in Billy Madison. He's this weirdo in Con Air. Who knows what he's capable of? For all we know, he could have killed that little girl and everybody else in the movie.
Yeah. But he doesn't.
He doesn't. Okay. Wow. That is. Okay, so before we leave the plane, is there any other? We talked a little bit about Ving Rhames and Buscemi. We talked about well, I guess we've touched on a whole lot, but let's talk about Baby O for a minute. I feel like the whole reason that Michael T. Williamson gets cast in this movie is because somebody saw his death scene in Forrest Gump and said, I need you to do that for an hour 45.
Right. One more time.
That's the same guy?
Yes, that's Bubba. That's Bubba.
Yeah. Somebody was like, ooh, he dies good.
He does.
Can you do this for like a longer period of time? Same thing. You're going to die in Nick Cage's arms instead of Tom Hanks, but pretty much same thing. In
the arms of another mentally deficient Southerner.
I had no idea they were the same person.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's Bubba.
And
Two revelations.
Yeah, it's
see.
Well, that's what we do here in Guilty Pleasures. We blow minds.
Yeah.
But yeah, because that's all he literally does is he's just there to humanize Cameron Poe a little bit and to give us one other person to root for and to give Poe a reason to stay on the plane, which still, I mean, it's a pretty flimsy reason. Like when you've got your wife who you haven't seen in 10 years, you've got your daughter who you've never seen, and then you've got this dude who once he gets a doctor, he'll be fine. Maybe you go. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me about that is two things. First of all, they treat his diabetes in this movie like he's ODing. Because
my grandmother had diabetes, and I swear to God, I had no idea. Like, my grandmother's diabetes was informed by Con Air. I was like, oh, Christ, you can't go on a plane.
Yeah, you don't have that insulin shot, and right. That, obviously there's, if you're diabetic and you don't get your insulin, that's a big deal. But in this particular case, like, it's not life threatening. I don't think that's a thing. Am I wrong on this?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, like, how you deteriorate like you have the plague. I don't know if those are things. Because Baby-O is literally falling apart as if he's got some sort of, like, really bad virus that's attacking his body, as opposed to his body just kind of gradually shutting down over time. I don't know.
Right. And as soon as he gets the shot, he's perfectly fine.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
He recovers instantaneously. It's like,
and then he gets shot.
Then he gets another shot.
Right.
In the chest.
Yes.
But yeah, so that character is just interesting to me because, yeah, he's the one thing that is meant to make us feel that Cameron Poe cannot get off the plane. No, he could have gotten off. That's all. I think he could have done that and been fine. So off the plane, and this is let's backtrack for a minute and get back to the moment that I realized I loved this movie all over again, and that's just the opening sequence. Because for two reasons. First of all, we get Christina Braverman herself, Monica Potter as Trisha Poe, Cameron Poe's wife who's expecting. And we get the anthem that has gone on to incredible success, the hit song "How Do I Live" by Trisha Yearwood. We'll sidebar because we got a whole other thing to talk about with that song. But I had totally forgotten that Monica Potter was in this movie, and I saw it and I was so excited. I was like, holy shit, I forgot she was in this movie. And so we see her, and there's the scene where the reason Cameron Poe gets sent to prison is because he gets into a bar fight with these drunken rednecks who decide that the right exact time that they're going to make their move on her is when her active military husband is standing right there.
Right.
Wearing army dress too. It's not like he's in civilian clothes and they just didn't realize.
Right. No, he's a freaking ranger. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
But it's people like him that cost us Vietnam.
Yeah, because of pussies like you, we lost Vietnam.
Yeah. Oops. So yeah, they pick the absolute worst time to pick a fight. So they take it outside, and in the fight, one of them, Cameron Poe accidentally kills one of them, and for some reason, he's got the worst lawyer ever. Because they don't argue self-defense. It's a 3-on-1 fight. He's clearly defending himself. He dies. The death is accidental, and yet he's convicted of involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, and I also don't get, if someone is that trained, he's a ranger. I don't know how he would accidentally kill someone. Maybe that's what they argued too in court, I guess. But like, I just feel like he wouldn't have been like, "Oh, I hit him too hard. Oops." Like that's not. They're super trained to not do stuff like that.
To not shove a guy's nose into his brain.
Exactly. Like he knew exactly what he was doing when he did that, which is, I guess, maybe what the prosecutor argued. But now we're getting into the weeds.
Well, no, let's stay in the weeds for a minute, because the other problem I have with it is the judge says, well, because you are military, you are a lethal weapon and such carries a harsher penalty. Not a thing, folks.
Not a thing.
That's not a thing?
That's not real life.
That is not a thing. There is no such. Wow. Yeah, no one's hands are considered lethal weapons. That is
to them.
To them, you know.
That's a different story. Yeah.
Right. But no, that's definitely not a thing. So not only I think is he wrongfully it's bad movie logic, but it's just the whole sequence with the stereotypical drunk rednecks and the song is just it lets you know right off the bat that this movie is going to be something at least. And then it dovetails nicely with the last scene where we get called back to where How Do I Live comes back. Cameron Poe is reunited with his wife and now has seen his daughter, who's now 6 or 7 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he presents her the bunny. What are any thoughts on that scene before? Because I've got a few, but anybody, Sam, you're the resident country expert on this podcast.
Well, thank you.
Your thoughts on the How Do I Live scenes?
Well, I mean, I've got thoughts on the How Do I Live song in itself. I mean, there's obviously controversy with that song, which I thought you were going to talk about later, but we can talk about now.
Okay, no, let's go. Okay, let's go ahead. So the controversy is, for those of you who don't know, you're like, well, wait a minute, isn't this a LeAnn Rimes song?
No.
And well,
wrong.
Historically, technically speaking, or at least this is the legend of this story, is that this song, LeAnn Rimes technically does record this song first. Disney, the producers of this movie, decide they don't want to use a 14-year-old girl's voice as the love ballad for their R-rated action movie. So they keep the song, but they hire Trisha Yearwood to sing the song. And Trisha has said in interviews at the time she was not aware that LeAnn Rimes had recorded it previously, but it's a big no-no in the country music world to record somebody else's song.
Oh.
So
I always thought it was the other way around. See? I'm learning.
Yeah. See, but LeAnn Rimes' father was not happy. And LeAnn ordered the studio to release her version of the song post haste. So the single, How Do I Live, both versions are actually released on the same day. They're both hits. But ultimately, Trisha Yearwood's version is the one that's used in Con Air. They're both nominated for Grammys. And this is the best part, is on the Grammys, they're both nominated for their vocal performance. LeAnn Rimes is the one who gets to perform the song. She performs the song live. Right after that, they announce, they do the award that they're both nominated for. And who wins? Trisha Yearwood. So it is so awkward because there's this like happy teenage LeAnn Rimes smiling backstage, and everybody kind of thinks, okay, well, they wouldn't have her sing the song live if she wasn't gonna win, would they?
Right.
And they do. So she and then the look on Trisha Yearwood's face when her name is called is priceless. If you can find it, actually, there's a good article about it on The Ringer, diving into this controversy. But ultimately, LeAnn Rimes wins in the end with this song because her version of the song becomes one of the biggest singles of all time. Not just country, not pop. It stays on the pop charts for 68 or 69 weeks, I believe. It sets a record. It's the fourth highest song in the Billboard all-time 100. It's highest, it's the highest single for a solo female artist. So I guess, things tend to work out, but Trisha Yearwood will always have, mine wasn't featured in Con Air.
And she won the Grammy.
And she won the Grammy and was nominated for an Oscar. This movie has 2 Oscar nominations.
What was the other one?
Best sound editing. Sound editing.
Nice. So, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Doesn't win either. But so So having said that, Sam, are you team Rhymes or are you team Yearwood?
I'm 100% Team Yearwood. But I guess I only choose because of like, Leanna Rhymes' personal life, which shouldn't be part of my decision, but it weighs heavily on it. But I just like Trisha Yearwood's voice better. Anyway, I think it's prettier and less I don't know. She like since Leanne was only 14 or whatever, it just doesn't sound as great to me.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly she did well, so good on her.
Mm-hmm. Christian, do you have thoughts on this?
Well, I know nothing about Trisha Yearwood. I know nothing about Leanne Rhymes. I do know the boner I had to hide in my pants at every school dance that this was played during while I slow danced. I'm gonna have to go with Team Leanne Rhymes, I guess.
Because God, Christian.
I don't know. I have no reason not to. I guess she's the Hitler of country music. I have no idea.
She kind of is, but that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right, Christian, too, because that's immediate. That, I mean, not maybe not as graphically, but the minute that those first three notes get sung, it is an immediate transport to high school dances.
I think high school dances and like also weddings in the late 90s of just like on the last days of a VCR camcorder of somebody cutting a cake or the bride and groom like dancing together for the first time in just the rural South. Like I don't know what that life's like, but I imagine this song is played at a lot of Southern weddings.
I would, I would think so. Yeah. So no, it was right. 69 weeks on the chart, 32 weeks in the top 10 alone, and 25 of those weeks in the top 5.
Wow.
So yeah, not too shabby. So yeah. So that song becomes the bookend for this movie, and it sets up in the final scene what I think is just quintessential Bruckheimer, which is this like a super sentimental moment and super cheesy moment that is, meant to tug at the heartstrings. And my note on that scene was, this is emotionally manipulative bullshit. And why am I crying? Because for some reason, like, it's got everything. It's got the little kid. It's got, Nick Cage, just a bloodied mess with the bloody bunny. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just
he was just shot in the arm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's the scene where he gets shot, but he doesn't even feel it or acts like he gets shot. He just keeps walking. Ugh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the
point. Not. Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that's one of my highlights for scenes that stuck out to me. Christian, how about you? Is there any scene in particular that sticks out that you want to mention?
I mean, I think I'd have to say my favorite scene in the entire movie, hands down, is the character introductions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is the coolest sounding part. As someone who fancies himself a writer, it's the best. It's the coolest exposition in any movie that I can possibly think of, where they're just giving us straight information and it's told in the most interesting way possible. I think that's really cool. I also dig any scene pretty much where the electric guitar is played underneath and part of the score. I think Mark Mancina, the guy that also did the Bad Boys soundtrack too, along with a couple other big scores, also did this one, and that's kind of a big thing of his, is having the electric guitar just wailing away in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think my favorite scene is right after he finally finds the syringe at the airfield, and he's got to run back to the airplane to get it to his friend, and it's just like him. He's like, well, I guess we better do this, or whatever he says. And it's like running through like explosions, and he gets in like the on fire cop car and like drives through firefight, and it's just so absurd, but also like super, super great.
Mhm.
That's my favorite scene.
Yeah, no, that whole sequence, and we talked about it. We touched on it a little earlier, but yeah, that whole sequence at the trailer park slash airport, there is so much going on in that. Like it's
Mhm.
like there's the random little girl in the empty pool. There's
Oh,
it's seemingly like a small community living like in the middle of nowhere with no access to just like anything, but they
Yeah.
also
Right.
have an airplane hangar just chilling.
Yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family that lives off in this airfield somewhere in a trailer park nearby, where there's nothing. There's what, like, there's chicken legs in the medical supply thing. There's
Mhm.
chicken legs,
Oh
first
yeah.
aid kits. That's the kind of community where these people live.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then we get the standoff between Nick Cage and Ving Rhames and John Malkovich, which has one of like the weird. I totally believe this was Bruckheimer just warming up for CSI, because he comes up with so many. This movie has so many fucking quips in it. It's ridiculous. Like there could just be like just the Who after almost every line. Because he's first got the one line of "What's wrong with him?" and Nick Cage just goes, my first thought would be a lot."
Who are you?
But of all the clunky lines, of all the lines, my favorite one is when he's trying to talk Malkovich down, and he's like, "No, Cyrus, no, this is your barbecue, and it tastes good." It's the dumbest line, and I love it so much because I don't
Awesome.
I don't understand where it comes from. But yeah, so yeah, there's the scene, him running, everything's exploding, the plane takes off, and it somehow manages to hook the Porsche
Oh my
and
god.
send the Porsche flying, which is another ridiculous and beautiful moment too, because it's the fact that the Porsche is even there. Like they jump through so many hoops just to get the Porsche there, literally just for the only reason so they could destroy it.
Right. Just for that one scene.
Also, I totally forgot, but one of my favorite lines is the when John Cusack in Sandino's hangar, he goes, "What are you gonna do?" He's like, "What do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna save the fucking day." Like,
I'm gonna save the fucking day.
yeah.
No, yeah, that's all this movie. This movie is just. I feel like it was written. The dialogue was written by like a 14-year-old who was raised on nothing but westerns and steroids.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Because everyone in this movie just has the biggest set of balls on them. There's no like meek character in this. Everyone's just like sweaty and tough and smart and just like and has like the perfect line for everything. But okay, what about are there any other sequences? Because that's a pretty like they spend a lot of that movie. They spend like a good chunk of the movie at that one sequence. Is there any other sequences that we haven't touched on yet that you wanted to get to?
It's difficult in the latter half of the movie, and I'll tell you why. Is because there's no real like breather between the ending of Act 2, which is the shootout in the boneyard, and the very end of the movie. Mm-hmm. We go straight from that shootout scene to the end, and there's no stopping point in it whatsoever. It's pretty incredible. Also, and I think this is more telling about what Christian likes, but also this where John Malkovich is explaining to everybody. He's got the little miniature setup and explaining how they're going to kill everybody. That is also a cool part as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Christian likes exposition told in a cool way.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. So, well, and this movie ultimately, we talked about the cast, but so I wanted to take a minute because this is always fun for me to look at alternative casting. And so there's some interesting choices that happen in this casting process. the first one, I guess I'll start with this one because it has the best story with it. So the role of Cyrus Grissom ultimately goes to John Malkovich, who I don't think we've touched on enough in this yet, but he is really good in this movie.
He's really good in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, he could be a great action movie villain because I think he understands that he's slumming it a bit, and I feel the same way about him in this as I do in Rounders, where he's just, okay, here's my money. I'm gonna take a big wild swing because who the fuck cares?
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, Malkovich will do these movies where you're just kind of like, oh wait, John Malkovich is in this? All right, I guess he is. He must owe somebody money, or someone's got like pictures of his wife or something like that, because John Malkovich is in this. Oh, all right.
Pictures of his wife.
Yeah. Steppenwolf needs a new lighting rig. Okay. But yeah, no, it's so he ends up getting the part. Allegedly, one of the people that auditioned for some of the people that auditioned for this movie include Gary Oldman,
ooh, yeah,
Tim Robbins, Ed Harris, Michael Madsen. And then there's some names on here that just don't even sound like this was ever a legitimate possibility, like Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, John Travolta, which would have been two 1997 movies starring both Nick Cage and John Travolta. I don't think the world could have handled that.
That would have been so cool.
So, but the most interesting story out of it is Mickey Rourke, who pre-comeback Mickey Rourke auditioning for the role of Cyrus, and he improvised by producing a razor sharp Bowie knife at his audition. And he was no longer considered for the role.
Long story short,
he was just doing his sides, and he just took out a fucking knife for emphasis.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So how was your day today, sweetheart? Oh, it was fine. You know, Mickey Rourke pulled a knife on me. Typical Wednesday.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is one of those stories that maybe isn't true, but is 100% believable.
I hope it's true.
Yeah. No, I hope it's true too.
So, also up for the role of Vince Larkin, the role that went to John Cusack allegedly, was Robert Downey Jr., Charlie Sheen, and Matthew Broderick.
Ooh.
So, which
if you would be like, name someone worse than John Cusack, it would have been Matthew Broderick. Ooh, I think Robert Downey Jr. would have been awesome.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Although I think Robert Downey Jr. was probably on a prison plane in the midnight.
Yeah, that was a rough time period for him.
He really would have committed to those monologues about the injustice of the prison system.
Right.
He'd have sold that shit. And then, considered for the role of Cameron Poe allegedly are pretty much everybody that you'd expect at this time period: Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Bruce Willis, Kurt Russell, Jean-Claude Van Damme. These are all people who were considered. Ultimately, I think you got to say they made the right call. I don't know if you could have this movie with anybody but Nick Cage.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, and because of that, I think the role is somewhat iconic because allegedly Kid Rock's song "American Badass" is meant as a tribute to Nick Cage's character Cameron Poe.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
is about right. And then somebody pointed this out to me as well, is that J.J. Abrams must be a fan of this movie because one of the main characters in the new Star Wars franchise is Poe Dameron.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
You can't tell me that that's a happy coincidence that somewhere J.J. Abrams is like, okay, I've been entrusted with the most beloved franchise, but I also want to get a Con Air reference in there.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So any other things that we haven't touched on before we wrap this up?
I I didn't know if we were going to mention it or not, but the itchy and scratchy death for John Malkovich at the end, where he is stabbed, blown up, and then crushed, is one of the best kind of like, I don't know, ending deaths for a bad guy. I mean, if the gold standard is throwing Hans Gruber off of Nakatomi Plaza, then this is by far way beyond what is needed. It is. It's pretty great.
Yeah, because he gets thrown from a fire truck into power lines, where he then lands perfectly with his head perfectly in the rock smasher?
Yeah, the rock smasher.
The rock smasher.
Not before that, he's stabbed through the leg, and then he's handed up to the ladder, which drives into the overhang restaurant, which he still kind of survives. So,
right,
yeah,
with the fire truck driven by Mr. Friendly, MC Gainey.
Oh yeah. Swamp Thing.
Yeah, Swamp Thing. Another great villain name. Yeah, no, that scene is and the POV shot of the rock crusher landing on John Malkovich. It's like it's the darkest version of Home Alone you've ever seen. like I just at some point they had to edit out him just going uh-oh. All right, how about you, Sam? Is there anything else you want to touch on?
I'm thinking. No, I think we hit pretty much everything. You know, it's such a detailed film. I don't want to miss anything. No, go ahead.
Okay. No, the only thing that I don't think we covered, we touched on it briefly, is Dave Chappelle is in this movie.
Dave Chappelle was?
Just reminder, Dave Chappelle is in Con Air. He improvises almost all of his lines in the movie.
Does he?
Yes, he does. That makes sense. And he's not a big star at the moment. So it's like, and I remember being a fan of his stand-up at the time. I was like, good for him. He's in this big budget movie. You think it's going to lead to something. It doesn't. This and Half Baked is what he his filmography. But it was fun to see him in this movie and totally forgot that he was in it until I went back and looked at the cast when we were going to do this. Yeah, I think that's all. So let's take this then. I think I can predict where we're going to go with this, but let's turn this to our guilt meter, which is our rating system here on Guilty Pleasures. So on a scale of 1 to 5 shame spirals, 1 being you love this movie, everyone needs to see this, and you will show this to people if you have to get them to see this. To 5 shame spirals, meaning you either don't like this movie, or if you like this movie, you will not tell anybody about this. You keep it in your sock drawer and bring it out when you're alone. Where does Con Air fall on the guilt meter? Let's start with Sam.
I think I would give this 2 shame spirals. I think it's entertaining. It's fun. It's kind of stupid sometimes, but I don't think it's like a complete guilty pleasure. I don't feel like it's like the worst thing you could possibly watch. I think I could get other people to watch it. Yeah.
All right. How about you, Christian?
I have to say that when I was watching this, I watched it like last week at the gym on my iPad part of the time while I was there on the elliptical, and I did like when somebody took the elliptical next to me and to move my iPad over. Partially, and I don't think it's the movie's fault. I think it's my fault that I was afraid that they would see how into it I was. And so I'd have to say, I mean, because of that, I would probably say like 1 in like, fuck you, it's an awesome movie. But like at the same time, like I do find myself being guilty that I do like it a lot. And if I did, like if my girlfriend was going through my DVD collections and saw Con Air and was like, oh, what's this? I would probably be like, oh, well, Well, sit down because I'm going to have to explain how this movie works to you. So I'd have to say probably 2.
Wow. Okay. That surprised me. I would not have bet that. I thought I would have put you down for a 1, but I'm going to go with a 1 on this for me.
Yeah.
I think this is probably my favorite movie of the ones we've done so far. And it's one of those movies where, again, my taste in action movies, I think, is different than most of America, I guess, which is why we don't get more movies like this. But like, it's so much fun, and it's so much fun to watch. And I think this is a great movie to watch with people. I think this is, you don't have to pay a lot of attention to it. You shouldn't think too much about it. But it's fun to see all of these actors together. It's fun to see some really great actors slumming it a bit but committing 100%. So I've got no bones about showing this to anybody. And I'm easily manipulated into sentimental love stories that are just shoehorned onto a plot. So this is a 1 for me. I think everybody should see it. If you haven't, you can find it anywhere streaming. It was super cheap on Amazon. It was like $5.99 on DVD or Blu-ray. So definitely give it a chance if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit I love Con Air.
Right on, man.
So,
Do it.
All right. So that's going to do it for March's episode of Guilty Pleasures. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up in March. We've got our brackets. We've got our Twitter poll. So please make sure you're following us at Front Row Reviews, at The Fake Blue Hair. Find us on iTunes, especially now that the show has its own feed. Please find us, subscribe to Guilty Pleasures, rate, review us. It really helps people see us and learn about us. Go to our YouTube page. All of the Front Row videos are going to be on the same page. You subscribe to that. Check out our website, thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. Ultimately, as we are expanding into a network, that may change, but for now it remains thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. Find us on Facebook. Let us know what you thought about the movie, what you thought about our takes on it. What are your thoughts on Nick Cage's Alabama accent? And any and all things related to Con Air. So in addition to that, Christian, Sam, do you have anything in particular you want to plug?
Let's see. If you are inclined to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter is Lapsed Christian. At Lapsed Christian. That's me on Twitter.
No, please don't follow me. It's weird.
Okay. All right. So that's gonna do it for this month of Guilty Pleasures. We will see you next month for whatever the hell it is you vote for. Go to Twitter, vote for it. We'll see you in a month. So until then, for the Front Row Network, I'm Lou Hare.
I'm Christian Crosby.
I'm Sam Dubina.
And as always, we'll see you in the front row.
Thanks, Lou. Bye.
Bye.